I don't think Georgia's ever had a home football schedule like this. Stick with me as we go through Georgia's 2025 schedule, which was released by the SEC. It's breaking news that this is coming out now. We know it well ahead of time. This is pretty uncommon for the SEC, particularly lately. But now we know Georgia's going to host Texas and Alabama in 2025. They'll also host the Rebels and Kentucky. Combine that with Austin P and Charlotte, and that's your home schedule in 2025. You may or may not remember this, but Georgia's going to play at UCLA and to open the 2025 season. That's. I'm not aware that that's going to change. That could, but I'm not aware that that's going to change. I actually don't think it will anytime soon. Let me put this on the schedule. You can see. Um, yeah, I mean, the SEC putting this out on Wednesday, a big deal, knowing well ahead of time who you're going to play. Now, we don't know the dates of some of these games in the SEC. We know the dates for all of the other games, and we know the date for the game with the Gators. But you're going to open the season with UCLA. You're going to go to Florida the day after Halloween. And then your home opener will be against Austin P on September 6th. The the road game, the conclusion of the season will be against the Jackets in Atlanta. And let's just talk about this for a while, because I think what people, what happened here is that the SEC said, okay, if you're playing in 2024, you're playing the other team in 2025. You're just flopping the location. Georgia's the home team against Florida in 24, which means they'll be in red. That means they'll be in white in 25 in Jacksonville. That's a contract game. That game is not changing. That game is, in my lifetime, that game's not going to be on campuses. And I don't think it will ever be on campuses. And I can talk about that a little bit later. But Greg Sankey, I'm trying to fight through a cold here, so you'll have to excuse me. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is Georgia's trying to, excuse me, the SEC is trying to get things out quicker, trying to know what's going on better too. So here's the quote saying, "We continue to monitor changes across college sports as they relate to future scheduling. Continue with our current format for the 25 season provides additional time to understand the impact of the changes happening around us as we determine an appropriate long-term plan for SEC football scheduling." There's a lot going on here. One thing that the SEC did not send out in its release is that SEC network games don't have to start at noon Eastern anymore, and that's a big deal for the Western schools. Everybody that's not Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina. So the bulk of the league is in Central Time Zone, and they want some flexibility on that front, and they're getting it now. So games like the SEC Network game that starts on a a Saturday in the fall, that's probably going to start at 12:45. So State at LSU. That's not going to start at 11 o'clock. And that, believe it or not, that's a real aggravating thing for a lot of people. I know merchants in Athens, they definitely want the games to not start at 12. If they had their way, it would not start at 12. But, so that's one thing that everybody's getting for SEC network games. For ABC and ESPN games, those games are going to still be at 12. So these are games like, well, I've used the example of State at LSU. That might be not the best example, but if Austin Peay's playing LSU or Charlotte or any of those types of games, those games are not going to start anymore at 11 o'clock in the morning. The Oklahoma, Texas, they're really not. They don't like that at all. They don't like that at all. And so the league is trying to do its part here to part with its television partner, Disney, to give people what they want more. We're also going to know what time these games are quicker. I would expect here soon for us to know well, soon is a relative term. In the next 2 months, we will know where Disney is putting, like for instance, Georgia. Well, we'll know the first 3 weeks for Georgia. We will know every game for Georgia until they play, because we already know they play Alabama at 7:30. We will know Georgia's September, um, now. So so Clemson, Texas, Tennessee Tech, Kentucky, and Alabama. We will know those 4 games, and we will know Georgia, Florida, which I can tell you will be at 3:30. So I can report that. It would be shocking for that not to be at 3:30. So you'll know 5 games already, but on top of that, you may learn Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Auburn. You may learn those games now, and you may learn the whole thing, and they say, okay, here's the caveat. This game, instead of being at 3:30, can shift to 7:30, or this game being at 7:30 can shift to 3:30, or from noon to 3:30, 3:30 to noon. But it can't go from noon to night, night to noon, and or maybe slightly, like an hour or something like that. The television network, which that doesn't matter for fans, but if you're going to the game, it does matter what time the game is. I will stop talking about this after I mention this. I fly to the Vanderbilt game. So if I know 7 months ahead of time that I can just fly up there morning of and have no fear of it being a noon game, well, yeah, everybody just fly. That would be my guess, at least. Or well, a lot of flights, I think that would be the case. I mean, I hate going to Missouri for a lot of different reasons. It's very difficult to get there. And once you land, you still have to drive 2.5 hours, no matter if you're going from St. Louis or Columbia, or from St. Louis or Kansas City. But people say, "Well, why don't you fly to Columbia?" Well, because it costs $800. There's a different. I got 3 people going, so that's not how it doesn't work like that at Dawg Post. So, but if you knew ahead of time that Georgia, Kentucky was at, that will be a night game, well, then a lot of people would fly. So right now that will help over time with that. And the SEC has been slow to do that, but that's because its television partners have just not been friendly on that front, CBS. So that's all going to change. Now that we know with 25 who they're playing, I think that's a good thing. I mean, schools can plan homecoming. They know who their homecoming opponent will be. They know there's just so much that you can do when you can plan a long way out that it helps a lot. It just does. It does. I don't think it will help with schedule with scouting or anything like that for the schools, for the football programs, but it will help a lot. They're going to go. Georgia's open in Los Angeles at the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Then they'll play Austin Peay. And then, my suspicion is that they will, whatever the schedule is now is what it will be in the near future. So my suspicion is that they will host Austin Peay week 2. Week 3 will be Kentucky at home. Week 4 will be off. And then it'll be Georgia, Bama the last weekend of September. That's my suspicion. I don't know that. I don't know that. It just would be so easy for the SEC to do that and have the capability of doing that. One thing that I've not counted yet. Let's see, 4, 5, and 4. So, well, in the Clemson game or the UCLA game, so 4, 5, and 4. So you have 14 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, because you're starting on the 30th. You have 14 weeks so you can still have your 2 byes in a 12-game schedule. So I think it could very much mimic what we have this season. It's a good schedule. I mean, this is going to be the biggest schedule that Georgia's had at home that I can remember. I've been doing this for a while. And I don't ever remember Georgia hosting, they've never hosted Texas, but to have Alabama is a huge deal. I was going to say the other thing here too, and I, I don't know how long the SEC can do this, but everybody wants Georgia and Auburn to play every single year. And the other thing that I've been talking about when I started, the other thing that's really important here as well is that um, they're sticking with 8 game for 25. That means in 26 they could go to a 9 game. I think that is less likely than it has been, and the reason is very simple. It's money. The SEC is is probably going to wait as long as they can to have this decided, because they just don't know what's going on in college sports. I mean, here's Greg Sankey with this statement saying, as we determine the appropriate long-term plan for the SEC scheduling. Well, here's a full quote. Continue with our current format for the 25 season provides additional time to understand the impact of the changes happening around us as we determine the appropriate long-term plan for SEC scheduling. They don't know what that will be. I mean, how could they? You're going from 128 games to 144. So, that's obviously that's another probably 2 weeks worth more of games just by adding a game. Think about it. If everybody's playing everybody, that's 8 conference games, right? So that could be spread out over 2 weeks, 2 different weeks. So I don't think the SEC is just going to do that. We also don't know, frankly, where the ACC will be by then. I mean, I've not talked about that yet. I'll be talking about that later today. There's not a lot of interest right now for new members of the SEC. And I will talk about that more in the video that I do. That also comes down to money. But I think it also comes down to, damn, how big are we going to get? Like, what is the real value of adding another institution or 3 or 4? Because I just don't know that the SEC and Disney, because they're the two that are deciding this in terms of what will happen to the future of the SEC in terms of adding members. I just don't know if there's value there. I mean, just being straight up, people say, "Well, why would you not? Why would you not want Clemson and Florida State or North Carolina?" I just don't know that the value is there. I mean, if you're replacing Vanderbilt with one of them, then yeah, but that's not what's happening. So we got a long way to go on that front. I think that it's prudent right now to take the pause before saying we're going to do 9 games. I wouldn't do it without more money. I don't know why the SEC gives Disney value and Disney wouldn't give them back value. And, I would have to do the math as to how much an SEC game is worth, but it's not that hard to comprehend what it's worth. I mean, at the end of the day, it's whatever the value is of the contract divided by the number of games. And you can say, well, these are basketball games. Yeah, okay, but the fact of the matter is that it's football is driving the boat here. Or I don't know if you drive a boat, but driving the car. So if it's $100 per game, you should be getting $900 more or $800 more for 8 more games. And I don't know if Disney can afford. I don't know right now if the market supports Disney paying that, and I don't know if Disney is wants to do that. So we've got a signed contract. This is the part that the SEC should understand, because the ACC is having a hard time with that. We've got a signed contract by all these schools with the rights holder. You just can't break that. So not without a lot of trouble. So I'll have more to say about that soon. 2025 is almost here. It'll be here before you know it. And now we know Georgia will play Texas and Bama at home.